My beloved child, the moment your photograph was placed in front of that psychic, the entire atmosphere changed, and your special person's ex was completely unprepared for what came next. They had arrived with a third party believing this would finally give them answers about you. They expected something ordinary, something they could understand, maybe even something that would confirm what they had already convinced themselves was true. But the psychic barely looked at your photograph before her expression suddenly changed. She stared at your eyes in the picture, became completely silent, and then asked one unexpected question: does this person know how deeply they have affected someone's heart? Your special person's ex froze. The third party looked confused. Neither of them had mentioned your connection. Neither had explained why they brought your photograph. Yet somehow, the conversation had already turned toward your special person. Don't skip, because that was only the first surprise. The psychic moved the photograph closer and said there was something about you they had completely misunderstood. Your silence was not weakness. Your distance was not defeat. And the reason your special person could never completely forget you had almost nothing to do with what the ex had been assuming. Something huge is waiting for you, because what the psychic revealed next changed the entire meaning of your connection. What happened afterward was even more surprising. Your special person's ex wanted a simple answer, but instead, the psychic began describing a connection that had survived confusion, distance, outside opinions, and unanswered questions. She said your photograph carried the impression of someone who had changed another person simply by being unforgettable. That sentence hit differently because your special person's ex suddenly remembered all those little moments that had never made sense, the unexplained silence whenever your name came up, the distant expression, the comparisons nobody openly admitted were happening, and the strange feeling that some chapter from the past had never truly closed. Stay till the end, because the biggest revelation was still coming. The third party tried to shift the conversation, but the psychic stopped them and looked directly at the ex. You brought this photograph because you wanted to know who this person really is, she said, but perhaps the bigger question is why you are still measuring yourself against them. Silence. Complete silence. For the first time, the ex realized this visit might reveal more about their own fears than about you. And then the psychic said something neither of them expected: your greatest influence was never something you had forced. It came from the fact that your special person had experienced something emotionally meaningful with you, and once a person recognizes that kind of connection, pretending it meant nothing becomes harder and harder. But here is where everything turned. The psychic looked at your photograph one final time and explained that the ex and the third party had been focused on the wrong mystery from the beginning. They thought the question was, why does your special person still remember you? But according to her, the real question was, what did they understand about themselves because of you? Don't skip. That distinction changed everything. Your special person had apparently spent a long time trying to separate memory from emotion, familiarity from genuine connection, and outside expectations from what their own heart kept returning to. The ex suddenly understood why certain conversations had always felt unfinished. Why your name seemed to carry weight even when nobody wanted to admit it. Why every attempt to make you seem insignificant only made your presence feel more noticeable. And just when the ex thought the reading was finished, the psychic leaned forward and delivered the sentence that left both visitors stunned: this person's story is not powerful because they are chasing anyone. It is powerful because someone else may finally be realizing what their absence revealed. Something huge is waiting for you, because the photograph was only the beginning, and what your special person's ex decided to ask next was the question that could uncover the truth they had been avoiding all along. The next question changed the entire reading, because your special person's ex leaned forward and quietly asked the psychic, "Then why haven't they been able to completely move on from this person?" The psychic didn't answer immediately. She looked again at your photograph as though one missing piece had finally fallen into place, and then she said something that made the third party stop talking completely. Because some people are remembered for what they gave, but others are remembered for what they awakened. Don't skip, because this is where the story becomes much deeper. She explained that your special person may have tried to convince themselves that distance would make everything simpler. They may have listened to other voices, chosen what seemed easier, or buried certain feelings beneath everyday life. But apparently, every time they thought the chapter was completely behind them, something small brought the memory back, a familiar phrase, an unexpected thought, a quiet moment, or simply the realization that what they once felt around you had never been perfectly recreated. Your special person's ex suddenly looked uncomfortable, because this explained something they had noticed but never understood. There had always been an invisible comparison. Not necessarily spoken aloud, not always obvious, but present enough to be felt. Stay till the end, because the psychic had not yet revealed the detail that surprised them most. Then the third party asked whether you had somehow been intentionally holding on to the connection, and the psychic immediately shook her head. "That is exactly what you have misunderstood," she replied. "This person does not need to chase what already left an impression." Those words completely shifted the room. Your special person's ex had expected to hear that you were waiting, watching, or desperately trying to return. Instead, the psychic described something completely different: someone whose strength had grown through distance, someone who had learned to become quieter without becoming smaller, and someone whose absence may now be saying more than their presence ever could. Something huge is waiting for you, because the ex suddenly remembered a recent moment when your special person had become unusually quiet after hearing something connected to you. At the time, they dismissed it. Now they wondered whether that silence had actually been recognition. The psychic continued, saying, "There is something this person never received clearly, an explanation." That single word changed everything. An explanation for why things became complicated. An explanation for why outside voices seemed to matter so much. An explanation for why something meaningful was allowed to become uncertain. And according to the psychic, the unanswered part was exactly why the story still felt unfinished. But the biggest surprise came when your special person's ex asked the one question they had been avoiding since entering the room: if this connection mattered so much, what happens when the truth finally comes out? The psychic slowly turned your photograph around and placed it face down. For several seconds she said absolutely nothing. Then came the answer: the truth does not always bring two people backward. Sometimes it forces everyone involved to finally see what was real. Don't skip, because those words hit the ex harder than anything else she had said. Suddenly this was no longer about competing with your memory. It was about discovering whether important choices had been made from truth, or from confusion, pressure, assumptions, and incomplete information. The third party looked at the ex, and for the first time they both seemed to realize that there might be one missing event neither of them knew about. Something your special person had never fully explained. Something connected to the exact period when everything between you began changing. Stay till the end, because the psychic then asked them a question that turned their curiosity into complete disbelief. Before you came here, did either of you know that your special person once tried to find out something about this person without telling anyone? Neither answered. They couldn't. Because suddenly, the ex remembered something, a conversation from long ago, a question your special person had asked and quickly taken back. And now, for the first time, they understood that it may have been about you. What the ex remembered next made the entire conversation feel different. It had happened during an ordinary moment, long before this visit to the psychic, when your special person had casually asked a question that seemed meaningless at the time. Do you think someone can disappear from your life and still change the way you see everything? The ex had laughed it off. Your special person had immediately changed the subject. But now that forgotten sentence returned with completely new meaning. The psychic looked at the ex's expression and knew something had clicked. You remember something, don't you? She asked. The ex stayed quiet, but the third party wanted answers. Don't skip, because what surfaced next connected your photograph directly to a secret your special person had apparently kept hidden. The ex admitted that there had been moments when your special person seemed to know little details about you even though nobody remembered telling them. Not private details, but small things, changes in your direction, something you had achieved, something different about your life. Somehow, they noticed. Somehow, they remembered. And whenever anyone questioned why they cared, they acted as though it meant nothing. Stay till the end, because the psychic immediately responded. Sometimes people hide their curiosity because admitting curiosity means admitting the story still matters. That sentence completely changed the ex's face. Then came the revelation nobody in that room had expected. The psychic explained that perhaps your special person had not been trying to return to the past at all. They may have been trying to understand why the past still affected the present. There is a difference, and that difference was enormous. Something huge is waiting for you, because suddenly every confusing piece started connecting. Your special person's silence. Their strange reactions. The questions they never finished. The way they occasionally defended you even when doing so created uncomfortable conversations. The ex had interpreted those moments as random. The third party had dismissed them as old memories. But now another possibility existed. Your special person had never received the complete story about what happened between you. Maybe they had heard different versions from different people. Maybe assumptions had replaced honest conversations. And perhaps, with enough time passing, they had started questioning everything they once accepted. Don't skip. The psychic pointed toward your photograph and said, the most important thing about this person is not some mysterious label. It is that their absence appears to have created questions nobody else could answer. The ex stared at the photograph again, but this time there was less competition in their expression and more realization. They were beginning to understand that you were not simply a person from the past. You represented an unanswered chapter, and then the third party made one mistake. They asked, so who really caused the distance? The psychic's expression changed instantly. She refused to point toward one person because the truth, she explained, was more complicated than that. Sometimes connections change because several small misunderstandings happen at exactly the wrong time. One person stays silent because they expect the other to understand. Another person listens to outside opinions because they are confused. Someone assumes distance means indifference. Someone else assumes silence means rejection. Eventually, everyone believes a different version of the same story. Stay till the end, because that explanation triggered another memory in the ex. They suddenly remembered your special person once saying, "If I had known then what I know now, I would have handled everything differently." At the time, the ex never asked what they meant. Now the meaning seemed impossible to ignore. Something huge is waiting for you, because the psychic then asked exactly when your special person had said those words. The ex gave the approximate time, and the third party's face immediately changed. They knew something. Something they had never told the ex, something that happened during that same period. And after several seconds of silence, the third party finally whispered, "There's something about those days you were never told." The room became completely still when the third party finally admitted what they had kept hidden. They looked at your special person's ex and said, "There was a conversation back then, and your name came up." The ex immediately wanted every detail, but the third party hesitated because revealing it would change the story they had all believed for so long. Don't skip, because this is where everything started connecting. During that forgotten conversation, your special person had apparently asked whether you had truly chosen to walk away, or whether something had happened that made you believe you were no longer wanted. That question had never reached you. Instead, it remained trapped between people who thought staying silent would make everything easier. The psychic looked at your photograph again and quietly said, "Then perhaps both sides were waiting for an answer neither side knew they were supposed to give." Suddenly, the ex understood why your special person had carried so many unanswered questions. They may have believed your silence meant you had stopped caring, while you may have interpreted their distance in an entirely different way. Stay till the end, because the third party had one more detail to reveal, and it was the detail that made the ex realize the past might have been built on an enormous misunderstanding. The third party continued. After that conversation, your special person had apparently wanted to reach out, but something they heard changed their mind. Nobody in the room could confirm whether that information had been accurate. That was the shocking part. A single assumption may have influenced everything that happened afterward. Something huge is waiting for you, because the psychic immediately asked, "And did anyone ever verify it?" Silence. Nobody had. Your special person had made a decision based on what they believed at that moment, while you continued forward without knowing what had happened behind the scenes. The ex stared at the third party in disbelief. Suddenly, this visit was no longer about discovering some unbelievable secret hidden inside your photograph. It was revealing something far more meaningful: how one incomplete story can change the direction of several lives. Don't skip. The psychic explained that the strongest thing about you was not some supernatural identity, it was the impression you had left without needing to force your way back into anyone's life. Your special person had been left with questions because something about the connection had mattered enough to make those questions survive. And now the people who once believed they understood everything were realizing they might have understood almost nothing, but then came the moment that changed the ex's entire reason for coming. The psychic looked directly at them and said, "If you truly want answers, stop asking who this person is to you. Ask who they became in your special person's memory." That question landed differently. The ex thought about every unexplained reaction, every unfinished sentence, every time your special person seemed almost ready to reveal something before stopping themselves. Stay till the end, because one memory suddenly stood above all the others. Not long ago, your special person had said something the ex had never forgotten. "There's one conversation I wish I could have again, because I finally know what I should have said." The ex had assumed it referred to something completely unrelated. Now they were no longer certain. Something huge is waiting for you, because the third party recognized that sentence too. They had heard your special person say something almost identical on another occasion, but with one additional detail. A detail the ex had never heard. And when the third party finally revealed the missing words, everything shifted again. "If I ever get that conversation, I'm not going to let someone else explain my feelings for me." That final sentence stayed in the room like an unanswered question. "I'm not going to let someone else explain my feelings for me." Your special person's ex stared at the third party, because suddenly the entire past looked different. If your special person had said those words more than once, then this was not simply a passing memory. Something inside them had changed. They had begun questioning how much of the old story came from their own understanding, and how much came from other people's interpretations. Don't skip, because the psychic immediately noticed the significance. She placed your photograph back in the center and said, "Then this person may represent a truth they feel they never expressed properly." The ex wanted to know what that truth was, but the psychic refused to invent an answer for someone who was not there. Instead, she pointed toward what they already knew. Your special person had remembered you, questioned the past, and spoken about wanting one honest conversation without outside voices. That alone was enough to shake everything. Stay till the end, because the third party suddenly remembered another detail. Your special person had once started writing something after hearing your name. Nobody knew whether it was a message, a note, or simply private thoughts, but they stopped when someone entered the room. Until now, that moment had seemed insignificant. Suddenly, it felt like another missing piece. The ex asked whether that unfinished message had ever been sent. The third party shook their head. They did not know. But they remembered your special person staring at the screen afterward with an expression that said far more than words could. Something huge is waiting for you, because the psychic asked one simple question: what happened immediately before they started writing? The answer stunned the ex. Someone had mentioned that you appeared to be moving forward with your life. That was all. No dramatic announcement. No direct contact. Just the possibility that you were no longer standing emotionally in the same place where your special person had left you. And apparently, that possibility had been enough to make them reach for their phone. Don't skip. The psychic explained that sometimes people postpone difficult conversations because they assume there will always be another opportunity. Then one day they realize the other person may no longer be waiting for an explanation, and suddenly every unsaid word feels heavier. Your special person's ex finally understood why your photograph had created such an intense reaction in the room. It was never because the picture contained some impossible secret. It was because your presence exposed a question nobody had successfully answered. What would your special person say if they finally had to speak for themselves? Then the ex asked the question that had been building from the beginning: what if that conversation actually happens? The psychic looked at your photograph, then at both visitors, and gave an answer neither expected. Then everyone must be prepared for the truth to be different from the story they created. Stay till the end, because this was the turning point. Maybe your special person would explain why they stayed silent. Maybe you would finally understand something that never made sense. Maybe the truth would bring closure rather than reunion. Or maybe both people would discover that time had changed them in ways neither expected. But one thing had become clear: assumptions could no longer carry the story forever. Something huge is waiting for you, because as the reading seemed to reach its end, the third party suddenly remembered the unfinished message again, and this time, they remembered one line they had accidentally seen before your special person closed the screen. Just a few words. Nothing more. Yet those words completely changed the ex's expression. "There is something you never knew about why I walked away." Those words changed the entire atmosphere. "There is something you never knew about why I walked away." Your special person's ex immediately turned toward the third party and asked why this had never been mentioned before. But the third party had only seen that single unfinished line, and until this moment, they had never understood who it might have been written for. Don't skip, because suddenly every unanswered question from the psychic's reading pointed toward the same possibility: your special person had carried an explanation they never delivered. The psychic remained calm and reminded them that nobody could know the full meaning without hearing it directly from your special person. But that made the mystery even stronger. Why had they started writing immediately after hearing that you might be moving forward? Why did the first line mention walking away? And why had they apparently stopped before sending it? Stay till the end, because the ex remembered something else. Around that same time, your special person had asked whether it was ever too late to correct an old misunderstanding. Nobody had connected those words to you. Now, everything seemed to be circling the same unfinished chapter. Something huge is waiting for you, because what looked like a story about someone forgetting you was becoming a story about someone possibly realizing they had never properly explained themselves. Then the psychic asked the third party to repeat the unfinished sentence exactly as they remembered it. They did. She looked toward your photograph and said, "Notice what those words do not say. They do not blame this person. They suggest there was information missing." That distinction stunned the ex. For so long, they had assumed your special person's distance meant the connection had simply ended naturally. But what if your special person had stepped away because of something they believed, something they feared, or something they misunderstood? Don't skip. The third party suddenly admitted that there had been outside opinions during that period, people giving advice, making assumptions, and claiming they understood what you wanted without actually asking you. Nobody could say which opinion mattered most, but one fact became impossible to ignore: too many voices had been involved in something that should have belonged to two people. The psychic quietly said, "Perhaps that is why they now want to speak in their own words." Your special person's ex went silent. That line matched exactly what the third party had revealed earlier: "I'm not going to let someone else explain my feelings for me." Stay till the end, because the ex was beginning to realize the greatest surprise was not that your special person remembered you. It was that they might finally understand how much was left unsaid, and just when everyone believed there could be nothing more, the third party revealed one final memory. After writing that unfinished message, your special person had not deleted it immediately. They had saved something. Nobody knew whether it was the entire draft or only a few lines, but days later, the third party heard them say quietly, "One day, I'll explain this properly. Something huge is waiting for you, because the psychic immediately closed the reading with a statement that left the ex completely speechless. Then stop searching this photograph for an answer that belongs inside a conversation. For the